This is Toledo's Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell, and joining me today in the studio are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar, principal second violin and artistic administrator, Merwin Sue, and we also have the Toledo Symphony's music director, Alain Trudel. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, we are here to celebrate something that doesn't have to do with any particular concert that's going on during the season, but it is October, and this annual event was canceled again this year, so we're picking up the slack, and we're doing our own celebration of Oktoberfest, right?
Wunderschön.
Wunderschön. How do you say wunderschön in French?
Merveilleux.
I just say wunderschön.
Wunderschön.
You say it with a French accent. That's it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to talk a little bit about Oktoberfest today. We're going to talk about BACHtoberfest as well, which was the brainchild.
I see what you did there.
I didn't do it. I was just about to say this was the brainchild of our resident genius, Merwin Sue. We're going to talk about BACHtoberfest, although I've seen BACHtoberfest before. It's, you didn't just think of it, make it up out of whole cloth, right?
No, I think I actually did Bach around the clock, and that was in August.
Yes, you did Bach around the clock, and everybody was stealing that idea, so
yes.
You can steal back for this idea. Anyway, what we usually do when we talk with a guest is we ask them to tell their story. And so I wrote a little story for Oktoberfest, and I wonder if you all would indulge me if I play the part. Or maybe, Elaine, you want to do it?
I'll do it with you.
I'll give it to you here.
Okay, so
this is happening in real time, listeners.
You can sort of paraphrase what's going on there. Not to put you on the spot, but let me bring up a little music here. There we go.
Oktoberfest story. It all began back in October 1810 with King Ludwig I of Bavaria, who incidentally was the godfather of Mad King Ludwig II, Wagner's patron. Ludwig got married and had a huge party of 40,000 of his closest friends, with horse racing, parades, and other celebratory events. Now I'm all mixed up in my accents. I'm just going back to mine now. Thank you. And I shall keep my day job. That turned into an annual event after that. Oh, we're getting there. And it turned into an annual. Yeah, so remember King Ludwig I of Bavaria, not the crazy one, the other one. He got this party going for 40,000 of his closest friends. That turned into an annual tradition, which celebrated not only the king and his bride, but also Bavarian culture, and especially agriculture. You know where we're going with this. The beer and the bratwurst came about 70 or 80 years later. Okay, so it was well fermented. And by 1910, at the 100th anniversary of the festival's founding, over 120,000 liters of beer was consumed. That's almost 32,000 gallons. And I didn't read that. I just made the math myself, of course.
Where were you when I was writing this? You could have saved me some time.
So in 2013, 6.4 million people, wow, that's a lot of people, visited Oktoberfest. That's a lot of beer also. And visitors were served, there you go, 6.7 liters of beer. Oh my God. And if you want to know, let me do the quick math. That's 1,770,000 gallons.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow.
You did that so much better than I possibly could have. So now we know a little bit about Oktoberfest. Has anybody ever spent time in Munich, in Bavaria? Yeah. Elaine,
during Oktoberfest.
Yeah, you've been there during Oktoberfest?
Oh, yeah.
Hang on a second. I sense that there's another story
here.
No.
The thing is, I don't really drink, especially not beer, so it was a lot.
Not even Molson Canadian beer.
I spent the entire time trying to find something to drink.
Really? What do they offer besides beer at Oktoberfest?
That's the problem. He goes up to every single stall and says, pardon me, do you have any water, cranberry juice, maybe?
No, I wound up having some kind of Apfelspritz. Yeah. But it took a while. But it's okay. It was many, many sausages later.
All the best stories start that way. Many sausages later.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch that one, but let's move on. Let's move on. Now, nobody here has any kind of German heritage, do they?
I do.
You do, Zach?
I do, yes.
On what side?
My mother's side and my father's side. So we are German, Austrian, Irish, and French. So
wow,
yeah.
That's a great combination.
Yep.
Or so they say. But I mean, there's a difference between like Germany and Bavaria, right? Mm-hmm. Bavaria is its own thing. I've been there too. I don't remember if I've been there for Oktoberfest or not, and that makes sense because I wouldn't remember if I went to Oktoberfest. But I do remember going to the Hofbräuhaus, which is like the big brewery there in Munich. And I have vague memories about, the people walking around in lederhosen and what have you. Has anybody here tried on lederhosen?
I have, and I actually had a gig playing in those. When I was a teenager, I played in a German band, they call it Oompa band, in Montreal at the place, at the Vieux Munich, and also at the amusement park. Well, I'm a brass player. You make money like you can, right?
Yeah.
And I played the tenor horn. And the guy who led the band was the tuba player. And he said, well, we're going to try you. You're young, but we're going to try on the tenor horn. Nobody has been able to play it, like the sword of King Arthur,
Yeah.
And he said, if you can play it, you can play in the band. So first thing I did, I brought it home, and it's a real German tenor horn, right? So it's like a Wagnerian tuba, but on the tenor register. And I cleaned it, and I found a bunch of stuff in it. There were like blocks, there were nails, and all kinds of stuff.
What?
So I emptied it, I cleaned it, and it was very playable after that, but nobody had thought of cleaning it. So finally I played it again. Oh, wunderschön! It's like, and finally I had the job for the summer. So parades, lederhosen, and the whole thing.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. So your brass career started simply because you cleaned out the horn.
And I didn't tell anybody.
That's right.
So it just looked good.
So
Until
I'm
now.
imagining that your entire career centers upon pipe cleaners and Q-tips.
That guy, it was amazing. With Tony Stas.
Yeah, when you write your autobiography, it'll be called Pipe Cleaners and Q-Tips. I think it'd be a great name for it.
Peach snap.
Yeah. Well, folks may know that we are in our fall fundraiser here at FM 91. So we're going to take a little break for that and raise some critical funds to support public radio. I'm going to ask all of you guys about public radio and its role in the community a little bit later on. And we're also going to talk about BACHtoberfest that we mentioned. So Johann Sebastian Bach is coming up shortly. Before we go, let me get in one quiz question here. I do have a quiz. It's called Bach versus Bach, right? So B-A-C-H versus B-O-C-K. Does everybody know what B-O-C-K is?
That's PDQ Bach, right?
Yes. It's a strong German composer.
His daughter, Amber.
Or rather... Oh,
He was
Can you try that one again?
The recipient
where
of
is
many
it when
words.
I need it, right? Okay, so Bach versus Bach. B-O-C-K, we all know that's a strong German lager, which comes in different varieties.
Sure about that?
B-A-C-H is a strong German composer who wrote a lot of music. Now, first question, and you don't say this out loud, you write it down. We'll check it at the end of the podcast today. The word Bach...
Which one?
The word Bach means what in German? See, this is the perfect radio quiz.
Well, I have to...
Because you don't know
you
which
just
one
told
I've
us
got.
it's spelled two different ways.
Well, is it Brook? Is it Billy Goat? Is it Desire? Or is it all of the above? Or is it none of the above? A, B, C, D, E. Okay?
Wait a second, we're talking about Brooke now? Totally different composer.
Nice try. Our genius is trying to derail the quiz for everybody else. That's how you win these days.
Well, that is the worst thing he could do.
Yay! It was going so well.
Yeah. Well, we just leave something to look forward to, I guess.
And we are back. We're continuing with today's episode of Toledo's Symphony Lab, all about Oktoberfest, but we're taking a little bit of a left turn here for a discussion of Johann Sebastian Bach. It's BACHtoberfest. I've seen a lot of orchestras do, like, I mean, there are puns galore when it comes to Bach's name. I'll be Bach, blah, 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 Bach around the clock, which was one that you used, Merwin. We talked about that earlier. But BACHtoberfest has been used in different ways by different ensembles, where they basically just take it as an excuse to play a lot of Bach in October. But Oktoberfest isn't even in October anymore, so yeah, it's mostly in September. They moved it for the weather.
So it's kind of like Bach to the Future then.
Exactly. Okay.
0 for 2, boys.
Yeah, I don't get enough use out of that buzzer anymore since we switched the quiz around. So just relating Bach to Oktoberfest, Bach was 60 years dead when Oktoberfest was founded back in 1810, right? He famously loved coffee, as we know. He wrote the coffee cantata. But he did drink a lot of beer, and I'll give you an example. During a trip that he made in 1713 to consult on an organ installation, he had a beer bill, not a beer belly, a beer bill.
Well, he might have had that too.
Which amounted, well, maybe after the 2 weeks he spent here, his beer bill amounted to 8 gallons of alcohol. Basically, he drank a 6-pack a day for 2 weeks. Right, of beer. You're all looking at me like, I would never do that. Maybe Elaine, I believe, would not do that.
A tailgate to an organ concert.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Let me write that down. But we even know the kind of beer that he probably drank. It's called Gose, which is like a warm, fermented beer, tasted of lemons, coriander, and it was very, very salty. So, you'd want to eat pretzels or whatever you had on hand to go with that beer.
I think you'd want to have water nearby to go with that beer.
It makes you want to drink more, basically.
Is it high alcohol content, or is this back in the days when they didn't need that?
Yeah, I don't know. You're getting above my pay grade here, so I'm not quite sure what the alcohol content was. But it's kind of like a Weiss beer,
Gotcha.
The lighter, more lemony kind of beer, and not chilled at all, served room temperature.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Okay.
And you're out.
Strike 3.
Actually, Alain, what was the over-under on Zach puns for today? Was it 6.5?
I think it was 8.
8? Was it 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the coffee thing is spectacular also, right? It was like 15 or 18. It was ridiculous, the amount of coffee every day.
Yeah.
So maybe he did coffee beer.
Coffee beer. Maybe it just depends. He was on the road when he went for the beer, So he was like, hey, I'm on vacation.
And he walked pretty much to everywhere that he went. So he would walk like for a week to do a concert. That's, you get thirsty.
Yeah, totally. I have something in here. I think it's one of our quiz questions a little bit later about Bach walking. So we'll save that for later when the time comes. But let's talk a little bit about Bach. I mean, Elaine, you've programmed some Bach this year.
Absolutely.
And you have like the orchestral suites and what have you. I mean, give us your experience or your feelings or whatever you have to say about the music of Bach and why, we still listen to it today.
And it's interesting. We had a little comment in our opening concert a few weeks ago when we played the Enigma variations and we played the overture, the number 3. Well, overture, there are also the suites. There's the same piece. And we did that first movement, and it's like 8 minutes or 9 minutes. And we finished. I looked at Kirk, our concertmaster, and I said, and that's just 8 minutes of Bach, Yeah. And then he said, yeah. And, and the 62 also, it's like, it's incredible. Basically, it's a little bit impossible to understand, to comprehend. Let's say you can understand the music, but comprehend how somebody can take care of a family, a school, and write this. And the coffee might help, but still, take 100 cups of coffee, you couldn't get there. Yeah. So it's, of course, nowadays we're discovering that he created his own composing enterprise with his family. Also, his wives wrote music, and his of course his children. Yeah. But still, just the comprehension of what it is. I mean, it's really difficult to figure out how can somebody on planet Earth do that.
Well, so it's interesting to look at how he was viewed by history and by his contemporaries and his path to becoming whom we think of today as like the world's history's greatest composer, Johann Sebastian Bach.
I'm going to make it a really bad sports analogy, but it's like being chosen 199th in the, and the
You have to
draft.
explain that to me because I'm not big on sports.
Okay, well, Tom Brady was chosen 199th, and
Oh,
he became
okay.
the best quarterback ever. So, and Bach was actually he was never the runner-up. He was like the third or fourth choice. His last job, it was you had the Telemann, and then Graupner, which now we're starting to hear his music, and then maybe Bach, or nobody really was.
We're hearing his music only because of his association with
exactly.
Bach. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, he was viewed, as very academic, as very dense, and not as beautiful an output as other composers at the time. He had sons who were more popular than him.
Yeah.
Certainly, C.P.E. Bach was a much bigger name than J.S. Bach.
Also a wonderful composer, though.
Yeah, wonderful
and we have to say
composer.
he went blind also.
Yeah.
Let's add another level of difficulty. How did he do all of that? Just
People don't
understand.
think about that, I think, when they listen to the sublime music. But it was Felix Mendelssohn back in 1830, put on Bach's Passion there and brought so much attention to it. He was seen in a new light. And the Brandenburg concertos, in the 20th century then became like super popular and representative of Baroque music.
Can I tell you something that might be controversial?
Yeah.
Is that Bach is it's the same as it's faith, right? It's impossible to understand how he did all of that. It's like you cannot prove it. It's like, well, you prove it because you have the music, but you say, my God, you have to, at a certain point, it's kind of a testament to faith. Wow, you have to believe something without being able to understand it.
Yeah.
It's really it's very strong.
Well, I believe in lots of things that I can't understand. So I think that's a great analogy. I want to take a little break. Let's do a couple of quiz questions and take a break and raise money for public radio. And then we'll come back, talk a little bit more about Bach. I also want to hear what's going on this month at the Symphony in October. There's some great concerts. Okay, so let me pull up the music. Right, okay. Bocksprung is a popular children's game in Germany. Does it involve leaping over male goats? That's A. B. Leaping over bodies of water. Or C. Leaping over small amphibians. Or D. All of the above. Or E. None of the above. Okay. So that is quiz question number 2. Here's number 3. What came first at Harvard University, Bach or Bock? That should be easy. Just say Bach, right? No, it's B-A-C-H or B-O-C-K. Which came first at Harvard University?
In terms of a field of study, or when you say
in terms of for Bach, it would be the music of Bach, or Bock, any beer, right? Mm-hmm. So we're just using B-O-C-K. This is much more complicated than I thought it would be. We're using B-O-C-K as sort of a euphemism for all of beer in general, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one here. The year 1685 saw the births of Johann Sebastian Bach, George Frederick Handel, and Domenico Scarlatti. What other musical luminary was born in that year? Was it John Gay, who wrote the Beggar's Opera, later became the Threepenny Opera? Was it Antonio Salieri, the composer of Amadeus fame? Or was it the German composer and organist Heinrich Schütz? A, B, or C? John Gay, Salieri, or Schütz? And we'll come back. We'll have the answers to all of this later on in the program today. But first, let's take a break for public radio. And then we'll come back and talk about it. We'll talk a little bit more about Bach and what's going on with the symphony here on FM 91. And we're Bach.
I really thought that was a trombonist sound, but I was wrong.
No, it's not me. I'm staying calm.
Good job, guys.
Okay. And we're back for Toledo Symphony Lab, talking about Oktoberfest, talking about BACHtoberfest. It's also taking advantage of the fact that we have Alain Trudel, the music director of the symphony, right here in the studio with us. So, Alain, you're kind of on the spot. We're asking you a lot of questions. And we were talking about Bach and what Bach means to you. And I know that Zach had an interesting take on this he wanted to talk about.
Well, I just remember from some of the very first programs that you put together, you were using Bach in more of a masterwork setting than I think previous music directors have. So I just love to know what's the role of Bach from a programming standpoint? What does it mean for the orchestra?
Well, I mean, besides the obvious, of course, that's like, anything that Bach wrote is a masterwork. But besides that, because often we think of masterworks as the great romantic breath and the orchestra, and also the orchestration being very large. And Bach, it's not so large, the orchestration, but it's very important for us as musicians also to play this music and to get accustomed to the style. As there's a lot of specialized group that play, what they say, ancient music, but I mean that music. And for symphony orchestras, it's important to also play this music in the right style. So for us, that was something I wanted to do right from the get-go. I mean, the orchestra plays great, but I wanted to go a bit deeper in the more Baroque style. And I think, I must say, I don't know, Merwin, you probably agree that our groove is much different than the first few times we did it together. It's, I think we're starting to be at ease with the language because, again, it's not a group that's specialized in that, but we're starting to be like, right from the get-go, now we have an idea. There's a direction to it. Of course, I come with all my music mark, but that's just the start. You have to make a big effort to give it to the orchestra. And also, I like to play it with more people than people are used to seeing on a stage when you play Bach. You'd see like 4 violins, 6 violins. I would play with 8, 10 first violin, just to make sure that we all participate in the experience and also in the growth. It's incredible growth for an orchestra to play that music.
Well, and it's interesting because what you're talking about makes me think a little bit of those big orchestral transcriptions of Bach, but you're not going quite there. You're going in a slightly different direction while still kind of, expanding the sound and the experience of Bach a little bit. I think it's a nice middle ground.
It's true. And for folks who don't necessarily understand what that transcription comment means is that, we had Stokowski making these huge, elaborate, almost recompositions of Bach for very large orchestra, possibly with instruments that Bach would never have seen. And then on the other side of that, we have these very small chamber orchestras who are using Bach to really add finesse and kind of revel in the diminutive forces to make this beautiful music. And then you have in the middle an orchestra playing Bach, which is, I think, as you say, a great piece in the middle ground.
Yeah, and you also have, Bach is one of those composers that has been sampled so many times, in both in popular culture as well as classical culture. You think of Wendy Carlos, you think of all the Moog treatments of Bach, the electronic transcriptions of Bach. You think of the singers who have sung that, vocal groups that have done a lot of Bach. I've always thought that Bach could survive just about anything. Those melodies are so well constructed that, Mozart, you say you take a note out of place, it falls apart. Bach, you take a note out of place and it's jazz.
He would have probably be a jazz musician if you lived in our time.
Yeah.
That's what I think. It's because he was, first of all, a king of improvisation.
Right.
And he needed to have this outlet of improvisation, but with chordal structures that were complicated, which you could have, like if you do if you play Giant Steps or Said by Coltrane, something like that, he would have been more of a Chick Corea or something like that.
But there's also something very mathematical about it. So it's exceptionally spirited, gifted, and improvisational, but it's also highly technical and mathematical. And I feel like he's the one composer who can live in both of those places at the same time. And everyone else is either more experiential and impactful or more calculating and mathematical.
Yeah, you can do all that and drink coffee and beer
and have 17 dozen children.
Exactly. Not at the same time. Let's do a few more quiz questions here. This is again our Bach versus Bach quiz. Bach, the music, plus Bach, the beer. Okay. The phrase bread and beer was a common greeting where? In other words, people would see each other instead of hi, they'd say bread and beer. They didn't say it in English, of course. Would that be in medieval Germany? Would it be in ancient Egypt? Or in the Roman Empire? A, B, or C? Here's another one. It's against the law in Texas to do what? Serve beer and pretzels at the same time in any bar or restaurant. These are all actual laws, by the way. Sit on the curb of any street while drinking beer from a bucket. Let that be a lesson to you, Elaine.
Yeah, thanks.
Or is it take more than 3 sips of beer while standing up? One of those 3 is against the law in Texas, A, B, or C.
And all 3 are real laws somewhere.
All 3 are real laws in American states, not Canadian provinces, just so you know. It makes its own sort of sense.
I want to know where A is really a law, if not in Texas, of course.
Yeah. None of these are in Ohio, I should add. Okay. Speaking of the law, Bach spent time in jail. For what reason? Was it for fighting with his bassoonist? Was it for quitting his job? Or was it for writing the coffee cantata? A, B, or C? Very well timed. That's our quiz. We're going to take a little break and then we'll come back. We'll do a preview of the season for October. You're listening to Toledo Symphony Lab here on FM 91. It's Toledo Symphony Lab on FM 91. We're having a discussion today. Well, we started with Oktoberfest. Now we're talking about BACHtoberfest. Now we're going to talk about October in the sense of what's going on with the symphony this month. We do a little preview every monthly episode to talk about upcoming events, and there's some great stuff coming up. Merwin, I'm going to give you a chance to talk now because you've been sitting there so quietly during the course of our program today. This is your chance to shine, my friend.
It's just unusual, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been trying to read his quiz questions too. It's like trying to use X-ray vision. That's what I've been doing.
But I haven't actually underlined the winners. I figured out what was going on, so there'll be no more of that. Yes. Anyway, so what's happening this month?
Well, speaking of, intrigue, the next Masterworks concert is a concert of passion and intrigue, and it's a really wonderful pairing.
I think this fits well.
It really doesn't. We're not playing any Haydn whatsoever.
Okay.
That music is really hiding in the background.
Oh, Lord, there we go.
Okay, I'm going to do a sidebar for this. This is when I was, this is like 10 years ago, and this was 9 years ago because my kid is 9. And I was trying to put him to sleep, and it's this desperation time at 3 a.m. You're singing anything you can think of to try to put him to sleep. And the one lullaby that has stuck for 9 years since then is a song that I would sing, "Who's My Darling Little Pumpkin Boy," but to this tune. And I have no idea.
Hear it?
Who's my darling little pumpkin boy? Who is cute?
Yay!
It's so funny. I put Alen to sleep with my playing too.
Amazing. Singing and sleeping, and playing and singing. Yeah. So anyway, what does that have to do with passion
Merwin,
and
I'm
intrigue?
having some trouble sleeping tonight. Could you just start telling me a story, please?
I'm just gonna write some Goldberg variations, and it's gonna be great.
Okay. So now,
sidebar over. Okay. Well, you were playing Haydn, I had to point it out. So there's this concert really has some wonderful pairings in it. It really is kind of built around the idea of Wagner, but not at his most grandiose. I think we often forget about kind of the composers as people. We think so much about how they've influenced music, and Wagner certainly is that composer of the great epic. But in pieces like Siegfried Idel and the Wesendonck-Lieder, these are Wagner at his most intimate, and I think they're really wonderful pieces around which to build a program. And we kind of take this idea of love and kind of intimate expression, and then use that to kind of pair that with the Strauss Rosenkavalier suite. This is some of my favorite music. It's just incredibly beautiful music, and it's almost a tribute, a paean to a dying era. I think you really hear in the Rosenkavalier suite just the last breaths of the Viennese waltz culture, and and really that Viennese musical culture. Really, it's almost at an apotheosis in this piece. We then pair that with the Coleridge-Taylor characteristic waltzes. It's kind of the idea was to pair one waltz suite with another. We've kind of altered that just a little bit, but delighted to be presenting these beautiful waltzes by a Black composer of British origin.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you got in your 2 cents there, because we're going to talk about this next week, but I know you can't make the podcast next week, so. Yeah. You've also got the great trio of musicians, Time for Three. They're coming in and guesting with the symphony. Tell us about that.
It's really wonderful to see and watch string players who really engage in an extraordinarily deep and powerful manner with music of today and 20th and 21st centuries. And it's a extraordinarily fun pop show, but these are 2 violinists and a bass player who are also great singers, and they take these pieces. It's not that they elevate them, but they kind of really make them feel extraordinarily at home in a symphonic context. Yeah. So you'll hear like Metallica alongside Bach, and it totally fits.
BACHtoberfest, something like that.
BACHtoberfest,
right?
Exactly.
I know it's a bit of a stretch, but
welcome to the program.
It a shot. Yeah, I can play now. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that concert is just fun. It's just going to be fun,
yeah.
Really. And we can have fun in classical music. It is allowed.
Mm-hmm. And they are amazing players. Actually, Time for Three's collaborated with Jennifer Higdon for the rest of the program and concerto. So
absolutely.
Great players.
Well, we also want to mention that you've got the annual memorial concert for Dick Anderson, who was so involved with the symphony. And this is a great program of music that, he loved. And dare I say, loved him back as well. Mm-hmm. Does anybody want to say, we're going to do a whole episode about that, but you want to jump in here and tell us about this?
So if anybody doesn't know, Dick Anderson was such an advocate for the orchestra. He was twice our board chair, and he knew every musician by name, and he was perhaps our greatest fan and advocate. So when he passed, we, of course, knew that we would have a memorial concert for him. But this little pandemic thing got in the way. So I think this is the 3rd time we've scheduled it, and we're very excited to finally present the memorial performance and really use this as an opportunity to remember Dick, remember his wonderful contributions to the orchestra, personal, financial, and otherwise, and shine a light on such a magnificent and well-lived life.
Yeah, and as I said, we'll cover that and we'll explore it in much more detail in an upcoming episode. I want to finish out our quiz. Let me pull up our Bavarian music again. Just 3 more questions, then we're going to go back and get the answers. All right? During medieval times, it was customary to do what with beer, besides drink it, of course? Was it feed it to animals? Was it baptize your children? Or was it wash your hair? A, B, or C?
This is not one of those all of the above questions.
Right. When he was 20 years old, Bach famously walked 280 miles to hear a concert given by whom? Was it Dietrich Buxtehude? Was it George Friedrich Handel? Or was it Georg Philipp Telemann? A, B, or C? 280 miles by foot to hear that concert. Bach stayed and studied with this composer, hoping to succeed him. What job requirement tanked it? Why did Bach not take the job, or not want the job? And I'm talking about the composer that he walked 280 miles to hear. Kind of puts me at a disadvantage when I can't say his name, but Bach stayed and studied with him. Was it because he was supposed to marry the composer's daughter? Was it because he had to convert to Catholicism? Or was it because he got into a duel with the elder composer? A, B, or C? Okay, let's go back to the beginning and just zip right through these because I can tell you what they were.
All right.
I can't believe one of these multiple choice things didn't have like 8 possible answers, so you would spell out BACH in the answers.
That's just too rich for my blood. Okay. Our Bach versus Bach quiz. The word Bach means what in German? Is it brook, billy goat, desire, all of the above, or none of the above? Basically all of the above if you go by the sound, right? D. Bachsprung is a popular children's game in Germany. It's actually leapfrog, but it's not leaping over small amphibians. It's leaping over small children, right? So it's kind of a trick question there. So it was actually none of the above.
I didn't realize there was none of the above option there.
Yeah.
You probably said it. I'll go back.
I said it. We'll go to the tape. Okay. What came first at Harvard University, Bach or Bach?
Bach.
Well, you're right. It was a brewery that was built on campus not long after they founded it in the 1630s. It took until the 1870s for the music department to show up, and the Bach Society Orchestra was founded in the 1950s at Harvard. So Bach is the answer.
There's John Harvard's brew house there, too.
Yeah, basically. Okay, 1685 saw the births of J.S. Bach, G.F. Handel, and Domenico Scarlatti. What other musical luminary was born that year? I'll just tell you, it was John Gay who wrote the Beggar's Opera, born in 1685. Antonio Salieri was born in 1750. Heinrich Schütz was born in 1585, a century beforehand. Okay, the phrase bread and beer was a common greeting where? Was it medieval Germany, was it ancient Egypt, or was it the Roman Empire?
I'm going to say the Cresswell House.
It was ancient Egypt, actually. Ancient Egypt. Did anybody get that, by the way?
I did. So it's funny, and this is something that unfortunately I think I can only share with Alain, but in those asterisks comics, like how like you sometimes have he would speak with people from ancient Egypt, and I just imagined these it's like emojis before emojis existed. That's how the Egyptian characters and asterisks would speak, and I'm just imagining these little
hieroglyphs?
Hieroglyphs of bread and beer emojis.
Yeah. Well, actually, the hieroglyphic word for health is made up of the symbols for bread and beer.
Wow.
So you're onto something there. You could have been an ancient Egyptian, Merwin. Who knows? Maybe you're reincarnated.
He could walk like one.
Yeah. Although we can't see it on the radio. It's against the law in Texas to do what? Serve beer and pretzels at the same time in any bar or restaurant? That is actually in North Dakota. Was it sit on the curb of any street while drinking beer from a bucket?
I'm going with that one.
That's in the city of St. Louis. Take more than 3 sips of beer while standing up. That's against the law in Texas.
Wow.
Actually.
Is the beer that strong?
I guess so. They also, in Texas, they once banned the Encyclopedia Britannica because it included a homebrew recipe for beer. Yeah.
Okay.
So they brought back the Britannica, but it's still illegal to take 4 sips. Those are big sips, I would imagine. Okay, so Bach spent time in jail. For what reason? Was it fighting with his bassoonist? Was it quitting his job? Or was it writing the coffee cantata? It was quitting his job.
Everybody fights with bassoonists.
Yeah. He was in Weimar. He
wouldn't put anybody in jail for that.
Exactly.
Sorry,
exactly. But he accepted another job without telling his employer at the time. Got in trouble. Threw him in jail for a few weeks. Anyway, during medieval times, it was customary to do what with beer? Was it feed it to animals, baptize children, or wash your hair? The answer is B, baptize children. That's what they used to do with the beer.
I thought it was animals.
No?
Because the animals always look so happy in those old paintings.
Especially the Hieronymus Bosch or Bach ones.
Oh.
Yeah. See,
that's your best one to do.
Yeah, that was more of a stretch though. I was working on it. Okay. So last
Bach at you
question.
there, Brad.
Exactly. Okay. When he was 20 years old, Bach famously walked 280 miles to hear a concert given by whom? It was a Dietrich Buxtehude.
Or as I want to say,
organist.
Buxtehude today.
Yeah, it was Buxtehude.
Yeah.
That's nothing. I would walk 500 miles.
And I would walk 500 more.
I wouldn't walk anywhere. So, last question. Bach stayed and studied with Buxtehude, hoping to succeed him. What job requirement tanked it? It was A, that he had to marry Buxtehude's daughter in order to get the job. And he said, no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. So that's our quiz.
Oh, I got an F.
Our long-winded quiz. Anybody here get all of them right?
Oh,
Let me check.
I got 3 out of 10 there.
Okay,
folks.
well, tell me how many you got right, Zach.
3.
You got 3? How many did you get
Oh,
last?
3. It was awful.
3, and how many did you get, Merwin?
Answers?
I did get 5.
Merwin got 5. That makes Merwin, once again, your record remains unblemished as the winner of the quiz. Although you're not here next week, so we're definitely going to have a quiz.
You know, Zach won the quiz.
To very little fanfare, I'll point out.
Yeah, to very little fanfare.
Yeah. Well,
I like it that way because I don't want to get the reputation for being a genius or anything like that.
Oh, well. So we've just got a minute left, and before we turn it back over to the folks here in the studio, why don't you all just give it a quick plug for public radio, because this is one of the few opportunities that we have to actually have the show air during our fundraising drive that's happening right now. Elaine, you want to say something about, public radio?
Absolutely.
And the role that it's played for you?
Oh, yeah. As you know, I'm from Canada. When I was young and until maybe a decade ago, our public radio was the gold standard, and it has gone down the drain completely. And I shouldn't say that, but
in Canada, not here.
No, in Canada, and the gold standard now is to listen to the public radio in the U.S. No. And I'm sorry, it's because the government got involved, and they the traditional better is the enemy of good. You come in and somebody has a bright idea somewhere, but when we support public radio, we can keep the tradition of this music going, and also it's a mix of tradition and being adventurous a little bit. And nobody is like there's not somewhere as somebody in an office deciding, oh, this is too adventurous, because it's every place has their own. Own public radio. So this is, for me, I've been listening to the station since I'm here. And then when I go back, in Canada, I listen to it on the internet now.
Zach?
So I grew up in Toledo, right? So I've been listening to FM 91 since I was a kid. And back in the day when you had a radio that you would actually tune as opposed to hitting like a preset button, I don't think I ever had a radio that wasn't at 91.3. And that's back to when I was a kid. I think I was the only kid in my second grade class who listened to NPR. But your predecessor, Bill Engelke, taught me classical music. And I think about Carl Haas and the Adventures in Great Music and these great programs that FM 91 has always brought, and it's been a part of my life. It's always playing in our house, and I love this station because you guys have the best combination of programs that entertain, music that enlightens, and news that informs.
This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes of our program as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the TSO streaming platform online at stream.artstoledo.com. My thanks to Zach Vassar, Merwin Sue, and Elaine Trudell. I'm Brad Cresswell, and this has been Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.